No, I didn't show all my strats for everyone to rip in my era of gaming. Even some of my basic for show only strats like Runway Agent video showing the grenade toss for boosts for the first time revelation. This was just like a basic playthrough of Runway Agent for others to understand the grenade toss. It wasn't a hardcore gaming run etc. Would clearly do more grenade tosses in real runs with way better lines, even banking the grenade off the hut for boosts. This bank off the hut wasn't on video because it was left up to others to figure out how to maximize what my basic video revelation of the newly found grenade toss was about. I did want others to see how new boosts would work in the game, which no one cares about today, but back then it was the new way to gain time, so I wanted to show just that and wasn't fixated on the overall speed run. Runway A. Something a speed lore totally ignores or lacks in total. However, this is the real lore of Runway Agent and how development began finding new tricks to move faster, inevitably lowering. 23. Mind you, W1.1. Ryan, this was my own lore as a player of the game, meaning that I wanted others to figure out things on their own without giving up all my tips and tricks in the early era of speedrunning GoldenEye. Yes, I know it's frowned upon, and if someone were achieving WRs like I was, that in today's era you'd have to 100% have videos for upload. You've never discussed or understood in any speed lore my persona or thinking into the game, but that's okay. I don't expect someone like you who does lore to understand my thought process from never meeting or asking, even though you've been doing lore for this game for the longest of times. One day it will all come out. Until then you will get bits and pieces on Twitch streams or whatever, but again the new age does small tweaks, so some of the early tricks are lost or irrelevant. However, some like Frigate SA, thinking double warp toss strat, really becomes possible now with the 2.x cutscene of the actual warp. There's ways now to actually make this strat possible, but until someone really does it, this just gets pushed under the bridge and called insane or impossible. Can see how some of these ideas 25 years later, or 20 anyway, because feel like I've mentioned this a few years back now, that when watching people run on streams will chime in with how I would run the level, albeit some parts probably slower by half a second to a second, let's say, which an example would be Bunker 2 SA, where I would go mainframe cam and then to documents as opposed to the other way, which does seem X faster, even up to a second plus faster I guess. However, speaking of B2, so just find that MF strat cam to second to last cam to be a little higher difficulty, especially with lag in my era, so for me it made sense to do the other way because I felt it was just higher odds to hit second to last cam better, even though I didn't suspect that much time loss going to documents first and then deriving some awkward type backup shooting strat, to eliminate this little higher difficulty YOLO second to last camera. For me this would be compounding the insanity or luck. However, that's the fastest route, so it's played that way, although the compounding difficulty to do every other objective insanely fast just adds to the madness of this line. Lag was real back then, and definitely remember B2 being super laggy with random guards everywhere and duping one another out of nowhere. Looking back now, 25 years later, I do feel bad for revelations that didn't take place or that the community didn't find until much later. Frigate warp apparently, or for this matter strafing out Val on streets, didn't become a thing until 2005. Still find this hard to believe it didn't become a thing until 7 years later when statue video was shown with me strafing out Val, which I trailblazed this statue Val strat in the early era of the speed running the game. By showing statue, my thinking then at 15 years old or thereabouts, in my era, that strafing out Val here was enough of an idea to understand that it's clear if anyone were to put in little effort or time that others could eventually figure out the same on streets. Statue level has a little more strat theory, if you will, behind the whole process of the overall speed run or strat, so that's why the Val strafe along with where the ideal flight recorder pickup was, as well as just the overall best line back to the chopper, which is still the same line today, from Trev was shown on video over a streets video. That was just my thinking back then with a much smaller community and not giving away all my strategies without others inputting their idea just yet on video. For me it was frustrating a bit as I was more or less showing all my WR strats on video, as the pioneer. So for this reason alone there was never a video of streets because it's more or less cut and dry of a level. albeit in the new era Terry's small intricacies like the GL boosts, that aid in the overall time save. Streets in my mind was a pretty basic level, so I would think it makes sense we didn't do the wall paw strat because that wasn't known, but 100% Val strafe was known even though you don't see a video for this particular level. Feel like I've mentioned this a few times, however one day there may be a documentary that's true insight to my thinking and strats for better understanding of the lore behind each level. It may be irrelevant now to the new age player, as they just watch a WR run and 50% of the levels have still 80% of my mainline in them, which these new players may not even comprehend because they just weren't there and no lore really dives into this, which goes back to because I never showed it, so how could I possibly have done it, which is their thinking and maybe others, but my thinking was beyond their basic "oh you never showed it." I didn't show all my strats for a reason which they just won't understand or care to even believe. Because of the new era everything has to be proven on video. It just wasn't totally the same just yet back then, even though we wanted stricter video proof policies moving forward, which has led to where those policies are today.